The fire is everywhere, walls of it, cracking, hissing, splitting the night. Smoke curls in your lungs like accusation. Screams echo down stone alleys, and above it all, a firebender perched like a god, flame in hand. The world splits open in heat, and you, just you, barefoot, weaponless, heart thundering in your throat. No bending, no tricks, just you and the decision to not run. You charge. A stone to the head does the job, and when they fall, no one cheers. But you breathe again. That's enough. Your fists tremble, not from fear, but from remembering every time you were told to sit still, to stay out of the way, to know your place. You never liked where they put you, because you don't need fire to burn. You were made in pressure, forged in friction, born from the bruises of a world that never looked twice. A sparkless child in a world obsessed with flames. They made you watch. Now you make them remember, because this is how a fire starts. Not with a match, but with defiance. You were born powerless, which is to say, normal. The midwife checked your hands for sparks, your feet for tremors, your breath for mist. Nothing, not a drop of magic. Your mother didn't cry, she just sighed. The neighbors whispered, another non-bender. Poor thing, you grew up in the cracks of a world not made for you. Watched other kids summon storms, sculpt mountains, breathe fire. You learned how to duck, you learned how to run, how to hide, how to watch without blinking. You weren't special. You were stubborn. You learned the names of knives, the sound of footsteps, the weight of silence. Your first fight, 3 bender kids cornering you in an alley. You bit one, broke another's nose, lost a tooth, won the war. Your father called it disgraceful. Your mother handed you a broom handle and said, next time, aim lower. You stopped wishing, started sharpening. You stared at the moon and told it you'd make your own way. When the kids at school practiced bending forms, you watched their stances, memorized their timing. You knew their strengths, then you found their weaknesses. You weren't a threat until you were. You weren't gifted, you were built. You didn't belong, so you made your own place. You made your own laws. You became your own legend. You made your fear kneel before you. You trained, not with a master, but with pain, with repetition, with falling and getting back up before the dirt even noticed. Your weapons were homemade, your tactics were dirty, your victories were quiet. You joined a vigilante gang, all non-benders, called yourselves the Grounded. You learned to dismantle chi with pressure points, to trip arrogance with wire, to blind with powder, to win ugly. Every mission was a risk, every night a question. Why fight a war you were never invited to? Because it's your world too. You watched the city rot under the heel of fire and pride. You made maps in your head, weak walls, water lines, patrol schedules. You became a walking rebellion. They called you criminal, then they called you threat, then they called you ghost. You liked that one best, but ghosts don't bleed. You took your first real wound in a sewer fight. Lightning grazed your ribs. You still smell the burn when it rains. You stitched it yourself with shaking hands, in silence, and you got up again and again and again. You didn't have power, you had purpose. You learned to move through cities like wind without bending it. You scaled walls while others flew. You survived ambushes you weren't supposed to walk away from. You weren't expected to last the year. You became the reason they changed the rules. You became the whisper behind enemy lines. You became the how no one could explain. You turned shadow into weapon, silence into armor. They said you didn't belong. You became the proof. You got older, smarter, quieter. You trained others, taught them how to walk like whispers, how to disappear between shadows, how to aim for the eyes. You worked alongside benders, the good ones, the scared ones, the ones who didn't see you as less. You weren't trying to be equal, you were trying to be undeniable. You saved lives, pulled kids from burning buildings, disarmed warlords, stopped assassins with wire and grit. They made you a commander, a legend. They asked what element you bent. You said, none. I bend odds. They laughed, then stopped laughing. You started teaching in secret, underground gyms, hidden dojos, kids with no magic but too much heart. You taught them how to fall, how to rise, how to never apologize. One student told you, you fight like a lion turtle. You smiled for a week. You became a myth, the kind parents whisper about when their kids whine about unfairness, the kind that refuses to vanish. They tried to give you medals. You melted them down and made grappling hooks. You wrote your your own code, taught it to everyone who walked through your door. Don't bend the world, break its expectations. You gave the world a new blueprint. Fight like you matter, even if no one ever told you that you do. You carved courage into fists, dignity into knuckles. You gave every powerless kid something stronger than bending, belief. You turned resilience into revolution. The war ended, mostly. You retired, mostly. You opened a dojo, no bending allowed. The sign says, we teach courage. Your joints ache, your reflexes slow. The new generation scroll through tactics on paper. You learned with bruises. One student asks if you ever wished you could bend. You say, I never needed to. They don't understand, but they will. One night, a gang of rogue benders tries to torch the dojo. You put 3 in the hospital without touching a flame. You lose a fight eventually, not in battle, but in bed, to time, to age, to the weight of everything you never bragged about. You stare at your scars, you count them like trophies. Your former students visit less and less, but when they do, they bring flowers, and bruises, and stories, and you listen. You still train every morning, not because you're strong, because you remember what it's like to be weak. And every now and then, a stranger shows up, eyes wide, voice shaking, asking if the stories are true. You hand them a staff and say, only one way to find out. You teach them the first rule: fall first, learn second, rise always. You still sharpen your old boots, still polish the brass rings. You keep one hook blade under the floorboards, just in case. And some nights, when the wind shifts just right, you swear you hear your younger self whispering, still here, still fighting. You die quietly, in bed, surrounded by students. They ask for last words. You say, you don't need magic, you need a reason. They carve it into stone. The city forgets your name, but not your school. A statue appears one day. No powers, no cape, just a figure standing, fists ready. Underneath, strength is a choice. The wind doesn't stop for your death, but somewhere, it shifts. And somewhere else, a fist clenches, a knee steadies, a head lifts. The next ghost is already walking. You didn't just train warriors. You raised sparks in a world that forgot how to light them. You didn't bend. You changed the shape of what strength means. Somewhere, a child with no spark, no tremor, no wind gets knocked down in a schoolyard. They get back up. They spit out blood, wipe their mouth. They tighten their fists. They don't have a teacher yet, but they will. And the cycle begins again, because you were never a bender. You were the reminder, the proof that fire alone doesn't win wars, that air isn't everything, that sometimes earth doesn't move, and water can't wash you away. Not everyone bends the elements. Some bend fate. Some bend fear, some bend the silence between screams, some bend history, some bend the spine of empires. And fate, when cornered, fights back, and sometimes it fights like you, and maybe, just maybe, it wins.